All right, so looks like someone's been doing their homework. Huge stack of stuff here on jobs to be done theory, articles, excerpts, even looks like a whole book by a leading expert, huh? Someone's ready for a deep dive.
Yeah, looks like it.
And the job you're trying to get done, if I can use the lingo already,
Exactly.
is to, well, understand this whole jobs to be done thing.
Quickly, too, I bet.
Quickly, exactly, no time to waste. Well, you've definitely come to the right place for that. We're all about distilling things down to the good stuff, and luckily we've got expert speaker here
hmm
who's basically a pro at making sense of this kind of information. So expert speaker, when you were skimming through all this material, what really jumped out at you?
Honestly, the thing that grabbed me first was how many new products just totally flop. Like the book mentions this research from Frost and Sullivan that found only 1 in 300 new products actually makes a real difference for companies' growth.
1 in 300.
hmm
Those are some rough odds. No wonder companies are always scrambling for, like, a better way to innovate.
Totally. And that's a huge part of what this book is getting at. It argues that the way most companies approach innovation is just kind of off. They're so focused on ideas, ideas, ideas that they miss the whole point of actually figuring out what customers truly need.
Okay, so that's where this jobs to be done thing comes in, right? It's
Mm,
like instead of starting with an idea for a product, you start by figuring out what job people are trying to get done
mm,
when they hire that product or service.
Exactly. And goes so much deeper than just like the basic function of a product.
Right? It's like that classic quote, people don't want a quarter-inch drill, they want a quarter-inch hole.
hmm
They want the outcome, not just the tool itself.
100%. It's about understanding that deeper motivation. And what I really like about this framework is that it breaks down those customer needs into these 6 really specific types.
Right, well, walk me through them. I'm all ears.
Okay, so first up, you've got the core functional job. This is the most basic task the customer is trying to accomplish.
So like if I'm buying a car, the core functional job would be transportation, just getting from point A to point B.
Yep, that's it. Then you have desired outcomes, which are basically the ways a customer measures whether they're successful in getting that job done.
So for my car, desired outcomes might be things like getting good gas mileage, having enough space in my family, or even just feeling safe and comfortable on the road.
You got it. Then there are related jobs. These are tasks that kind of go hand in hand with that core job.
Okay, so for the car, related jobs could be listening to music during my commute or having a hands-free way to make phone calls.
Exactly. Now, this is where it starts to get even more interesting. We've also got what are called emotional jobs, which are all about how the customer wants to feel while they're getting that job done.
Oh yeah, I think this is something a lot of companies totally overlook. Like, if I'm buying a car, sure, I care about the practical stuff, but
Hmm.
I also might want to feel stylish or adventurous or even, I don't know, powerful.
Right, and those emotional needs can be just as important as the functional ones.
So what about the last two types?
We have consumption chain jobs. Those cover every need someone has, starting way back when they first even think about buying the product, all the way through using it, maintaining it, and eventually even getting rid of it.
So for the car, this would be researching different models online, getting a good deal from the dealer, then later taking it in for maintenance, and eventually maybe selling it or trading in it.
Exactly, you're getting it. And then finally, we've got financial desired outcomes. This is where we look at the financial side of things. What are the buyer's goals in terms of cost, return on investment, maybe even generating income with the product?
So for the car, this could be anything from negotiating a good price to choosing a fuel-efficient model, or maybe even using it for a ride-sharing service to make some extra cash.
Nailed it. So you can see this framework really gives you this whole comprehensive picture. It captures everything that's going on when a customer makes a decision.
Yeah, it's like looking at a purchase through a totally new lens. You start to see all these layers of needs that, honestly, we probably aren't even aware of most of the time.
Exactly. And what's really cool is that this framework doesn't just stop at understanding those needs. It gives you a way to use that understanding to actually create products and services that really hit the mark. That's where this whole outcome-driven innovation thing comes into play.
Okay, so outcome-driven innovation, or ODI, what's the secret sauce? Is there some kind of magical formula?
Haha, not exactly magic, but it does have a pretty impressive track record. The key is that it kind of flips the traditional innovation process on its head.
So instead of starting with a cool idea, you start by deeply understanding your customer's needs. That makes sense, but how do you actually do that in a way that's, like, useful?
That's where the research comes in. ODI uses these quantitative research methods to measure how well existing solutions are meeting each of those 6 types of needs we just talked about. It's not just asking people what they want, it's actually measuring how satisfied they are with what's already out there.
So it's about finding those areas where customers are struggling, where their needs aren't being met by the current options.
Exactly. And what's really cool is that this approach often reveals these hidden opportunities, like segments of customers you might not have even considered before.
That's fascinating. So basically, you're using data to create like a roadmap for innovation.
That's a great way to put it. ODI guides you through these specific phases, starting with defining the job to be done with laser-like precision.
Okay, so for my car example, we'd need to go deeper than just saying the job is transportation. We need to be really specific about what kind of transportation, for whom, and in what context, right?
Exactly. You need to understand the nuances of that job. Then you capture and prioritize all those customer needs, and you turn them into these concrete, desired outcome statements.
Ah, so it's about taking those fuzzy, sometimes even subconscious desires
Mm.
and making them measurable. Then what?
Then you analyze all that data to segment the market. You find groups of customers who share similar struggles and unmet needs.
And that's where those hidden segments emerge, right?
Yeah.
Groups you might not have even realized existed before.
Yep. And once you understand those segments, you can create a value proposition that speaks directly to their needs. You're making a product or service that's truly hired for the right reasons.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all fits together. But honestly, what I'm really excited to hear about are those real-world success stories.
Oh yeah, the book is full of them. Companies like Bosch, Microsoft, Abbott Medical Optics, they've all used ODI to achieve some pretty remarkable results.
Well, let's dive into those case studies next. I'm ready for some aha moments.
All right, you ready to hear how some companies are actually putting this jobs to be done framework to work to create some, truly innovative stuff?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Hit me with those aha moments.
Hmm.
You mentioned Bosch earlier, right? Now, I got to say, when I think of Bosch, I think power tools, not necessarily like deep customer insights and all that. What was their job to be done?
So, Bosch, they were trying to break into the North American circular saw market, which was already like super competitive, right? You've got big names like DeWalt, Makita. They knew they couldn't just come out with another Me Too product. They needed something to really stand out.
Right. Makes sense. So they decided to give ODI a shot. I'm guessing that was a pretty big shift for a power tool company.
It was. They started by, defining the core functional job, which in this case was professional tradesmen, like cutting wood in a straight line. It sounds pretty basic, right?
Sure, but I have a feeling there's more to it than that.
Oh, yeah, way more. So they did all these in-depth interviews with all kinds of tradesmen, roofers, framers, carpenters, even plumbers and electricians, anyone who used the circular saw on the job, basically. And they ended up with something like 85 different desired outcome statements.
Maybe 5. For cutting wood in a straight line. Wow, okay, what kind of things were they finding?
All sorts of stuff, from wanting to, minimize the chance of the cut going off track,
Right.
to being able to clearly see the cut line while they're working. They even looked at things like how to reduce the time it takes to adjust the blade depth, or how to, minimize the risk of accidentally cutting the power cord.
Okay, yeah, that's way more nuanced than I would have thought. So what did they do with all those insights?
They didn't just stop at the interviews. They actually went and did this big quantitative survey with a huge group of tradespeople, asking them to rate how important each outcome was and how satisfied they were with the circular saws they were already using. And this is where things got really interesting. Through this process called outcome-based segmentation, they realized there were actually 4 distinct groups of users with very different needs.
Ah, so even within the world of, like, professional tradesmen, there was a lot of variation in what they were looking for in a circular saw.
Huge variation. And one of those segments, made up mostly of Finnish and advanced carpenters, they were really interesting to Bosch. They represented a big chunk of the market, over 30%, and they had like 14 outcomes that weren't being met by any of the existing saws out there.
So they basically stumbled upon this, like, gold mine of unmet needs. What did they do with that information?
They used it to laser focus their innovation efforts. They took those 14 underserved outcomes and systematically came up with ideas to address each one.
Okay, give me an example. What's one of those aha moments where they really nailed a solution?
One of the biggest ones was their direct connect cord system. They realized that tradespeople were constantly fighting with tangled cords and sometimes even, risking cutting them during these long cuts. So they designed the system where the extension cord connects directly to the saw, which minimizes those risks and even reduces repair costs in the long run.
Yeah, that's so smart. It seems so simple, but it clearly addresses a real pain point for those users.
Exactly. And they did that kind of thing for all the other outcomes too. They redesigned the saw's table with this cutout that improved visibility of the cut line, which again, directly addressed that need for a better line of sight.
So they basically took each customer frustration
Yeah,
and turned it into a feature.
that's a great way to put it. And here's the crazy thing. They did all this without increasing the cost of the saw. Actually, they found ways to reduce costs through some of these innovations.
So a superior product and a competitive price. That's like the dream combo. What was the reaction from the market?
It was a huge hit. Bosch's new CS20 circular saw, it became a top seller. They even convinced major retailers, Lowe's, Home Depot, to delay the release so they could manufacture enough saws to meet demand.
Wow, that's incredible. Okay, so we've seen how this works for power tools.
Mm.
But what about a company that's not making, physical products? Let's look at a different industry. Didn't the book mention something about Microsoft?
Yeah, Microsoft was facing a challenge with their software assurance offering. It was basically this subscription program where companies would pay a flat fee for software upgrades and other benefits.
Okay, I can see how that would be a tough sell. It's asking companies to pay for something they might not even end up using, right?
Exactly. And Microsoft was seeing their renewal rates drop, which was a huge red flag. They knew they needed to add more value to justify the cost, but they weren't sure where to focus their efforts.
So they turned to ODI. Who were their target customers in this case?
They decided to focus on two key decision makers: procurement managers, who are, responsible for negotiating contracts and managing budgets, and then IT professionals, who are the ones actually implementing and managing the software on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, that makes sense. They've got to satisfy both the financial folks and the tech folks. What were those groups actually trying to get done? What were their jobs?
For the procurement managers, it was pretty straightforward. They were trying to, minimize licensing costs and maximize the return on their software investment. For the IT folks, it was more about minimizing the time and effort it took to deploy and manage the software, and minimizing the risk of things like, compatibility issues or security breaches.
So very different jobs, but both super critical to the success of that software assurance program. What did they learn when they really dug into those needs?
They had this big light bulb moment when they realized they were only addressing a tiny sliver of the overall job.
Yeah.
They were so focused on the initial software purchase that they were missing all these other needs related to the, entire software lifecycle. Things like deployment, training, maintenance, even getting rid of old hardware.
That's such a great point. It's so easy to get tunnel vision on just that one part of the process. But there's this whole bigger picture to consider. So what did they change?
They basically used all those insights to totally revamp software assurance. They added a whole bunch of new benefits that addressed those previously overlooked needs. And here's the kicker. They didn't even need to, write a bunch of new code to do it. They already had internal tools and resources that they were able to kind of repackage to better meet those customer needs. For example, they had this licensing server that could help companies track their software licenses. They had a tool that helped IT professionals anticipate software conflicts. And they even had a training voucher program that could help get employees up to speed on the new software.
So they took things they already had and just realigned them with those unmet customer needs. That's so efficient. What kind of impact did that have?
It was a huge win. And the year they announced those changes, they exceeded their revenue goal by over 10%. And that was before the new offering was even fully rolled out.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, customer satisfaction went up, complaints went down, and renewal rates, those increased significantly. They basically unlocked this hidden growth opportunity just by shifting their perspective a little bit.
Okay, that's a powerful example. But we've been talking about product software. Can this ODI approach also be applied to something less tangible, like, I don't know, a service?
Absolutely. The book actually highlights a case study about Abbott Medical Optics, or AMO, that shows how ODI can be applied to customer service. They were struggling to differentiate their customer service in a market that was becoming, more and more competitive.
So their job to be done was just providing excellent customer service. This seems pretty broad. How do you even begin to, Define that.
They decided to zero in on the materials managers. Who are the folks responsible for, like, ordering and managing ophthalmic lenses
Bang.
for, cataract and refractive surgeries. They did interviews, mapped out the whole job, captured over 200 desired outcome statements
All right.
related to AMO service.
200. Okay, I guess customer service can be a lot more complex than it seems at first glance. What were some of the key things they discovered?
Well, one of the biggest things was that through their research, they found this large segment of materials managers who were struggling with a surprisingly simple problem. They didn't know who to contact at AMO when they had an issue.
Really? Seems like an easy fix, just give them a name and number.
You'd think so, right? But AMO, like a lot of companies, had this very transactional approach to customer service. You call in, you get whoever's available, and there wasn't really any focus on building relationships or continuity.
Yeah, I can see how that would be super frustrating. Especially if you're dealing with some complex issue and you got to explain the whole situation over and over again to different people every time you call.
Exactly. And these materials managers, they were dealing with all sorts of issues, from lens orders and deliveries to, invoices and returns.
So how did AMO change things up?
They completely revamped their whole customer service model. They moved away from that transactional approach and embraced what they called a relationship-based approach. For their top clients, they implemented a system that automatically directed them to a dedicated advocate, someone who knew their history and could handle any issue that came up.
Ah, so it's like having your own personal concierge for customer service. That's a great idea.
And it was a huge hit with those clients. And for other clients, they created these regional customer care teams, small groups of people who worked together to, get to know their customers and build those relationships. They also introduced a bunch of other, innovative solutions based on their research. For example, they realized that materials managers were often, really stressed about having the right lenses on hand for upcoming surgeries. So they developed this software module to help with schedule planning and inventory management.
So they really went above and beyond, huh? Using data to create solutions that truly address those unmet needs. What kind of results did they see?
Total turnaround. Their net promoter score shot way up. Their customer loyalty index increased significantly. They even won prestigious industry awards for their customer service.
Wow. Okay, you've convinced me. ODI works for power tools, software, even customer service.
Yeah.
But I got to ask, can it work for any industry? What about something like, I don't know, groceries?
Well, get this. You're about to hear a story about grocery store lighting. That'll make you see those aisles in a whole new way.
Grocery store lighting, huh? All right, you've got my attention.
So this one's not about a grocery store chain itself. It's about this company called Hussmann. They make those, big refrigeration systems you see in the supermarket.
Refrigeration systems. Okay, this is definitely not where I thought we were going with this.
Right. So they were trying to sell their new line of energy-efficient LED lighting systems for, those refrigerated display cases. But they were having a really tough time. Grocery stores just weren't buying them.
Yeah, I mean, LEDs make sense, in theory. Better for the environment, save on energy costs in the long run. But I can see why a grocery store might be hesitant. The upfront cost is higher, and if the old lights are working fine, why bother changing?
Exactly. But Hussmann, they weren't ready to give up. They decided to apply ODI, and they did it in a really interesting way. They didn't just focus on the needs of the people buying those refrigeration systems. They also look at the needs of the people who use them every day. The store employees who, arrange the products in the cases, and even the shoppers themselves.
Oh, wow, that's a really interesting approach. So they were looking at multiple jobs being done at the same time.
Yep. And they did interviews with all three groups, mapped out their jobs, captured over 300 desired outcome statements. They really wanted to understand everything, from how employees interacted with the cases to how shoppers perceived the products inside.
300 outcome statements. That's a lot of data.
Mm.
What were some of the key insights they found?
So one of the big things they discovered was that the executive merchandisers, the folks responsible for the overall look and feel of the store, they had a lot of unmet needs when it came to lighting. They wanted to maximize, the visual appeal of the products, minimize glare, ensure consistent lighting across the whole case.
Makes sense. They want everything to look perfect, right?
Mhm.
What about from the shopper's perspective?
Well, turns out shoppers really care about color accuracy. They want to make sure the meat looks red, the produce looks fresh, the dairy products have that creamy color we expect. Fluorescent lighting, it can actually distort colors, which can make those products look less appealing.
Ah, so those harsh fluorescent lights could actually be hurting sales without anyone even realizing it.
Exactly. And that's when Hussmann realized they had this huge opportunity. to differentiate their LED systems based on those unmet needs. They went back to the drawing board, made some key design changes to their EcoShine line, specifically to address those issues of uniform illumination, glare reduction, and color accuracy.
So they turn those customer insights into product features. I love it.
And they didn't stop there. They actually armed their sales team with all this data, highlighting those unmet needs and showing how EcoShine could directly address them. They weren't just selling lights anymore. They were selling a solution to a problem.
Smart move. Give customers a reason to care. So what happened?
It was a total game changer. In just 1 year, their market share jumped from almost nothing to double digits. They went from selling thousands of dollars worth of LED systems to tens of millions. Even industry publications were like raving about these new lighting systems.
That's incredible. Okay, so we've seen how this approach works for power tools, software, customer service, and now even grocery store lighting. But what about those companies that are struggling with an even bigger question, like figuring out their overall business strategy? Can ODI help with that too?
Absolutely. A great example is Kroll on Track. They were a data recovery company. But they saw this opportunity in this emerging field of like electronic discovery. This was back when digital data was just starting to become a really big deal in legal cases.
Ah, so their job was to help legal teams find the needle in the haystack of all that digital data.
You got it, but this was a whole new area for them. They had the technology, but they weren't sure what their client specific needs were, how to package their services, even how to talk about what they did.
This sounds like the perfect scenario for jobs to be done. Who are they targeting?
They focused on the lawyers and legal teams who were responsible for, finding and presenting evidence in legal cases.
Makes sense. Those are the folks on the front lines dealing with all that information overload. So what did Kroll On Track learn from doing their ODI research?
They discovered that lawyers weren't just looking for any data. They needed specific types of information that would either support or refute their case.
Ah, so it wasn't just about recovering data. It was about finding the right data.
Exactly. And they also learned that lawyers needed help understanding and navigating this whole new world of digital evidence. They needed guidance on things like data collection, preservation, how to present it in court.
So Kroll On Track had to become more than just a tech company. They had to become experts in the legal aspects of digital evidence as well. How did they make that shift?
They developed this whole suite of services to meet those needs. They started offering data culling and filtering services to help pinpoint the most relevant information. They created educational resources, consulting services to help lawyers understand that legal landscape. They even developed tools to help present that evidence in a clear and compelling way.
Wow, so they really went from just data recovery to this one-stop shop for everything related to e-discovery.
Yep, they totally transformed their business. And it paid off big time. They quickly became a leader in the field and left their competitors in the dust.
That's a fantastic example of how ODI can help a company not only create new products and services, but actually define their whole business strategy for a completely new market.
It really shows the power of this framework.
I think it's safe to say we've given our listener a lot to chew on today. We've gone from those innovation failures in the beginning to all these inspiring success stories across a whole range of industries. What's the one thing you hope our listener takes away from this deep dive?
Honestly, I think the most important takeaway is that jobs to be done isn't just some abstract business theory. It's a new way of looking at the world. It's about understanding that people don't just buy products or services, they hire them to make progress in their lives.
I love that. So the next time you're about to make a purchase, right? Whether it's something big like a car or something small like a new coffee maker, stop and ask yourself, what job am I trying to get done here? And is this product or service truly the right one for that job?
Yep, asking yourself that question can make you a more informed customer, a more creative problem solver, maybe even inspire you to come up with your own innovative solutions.
That's a great place to end our deep dive into jobs to be done. We hope this has given you the knowledge and inspiration to start applying this framework in your own life.
And if you're looking to go even deeper, we'll be sure to include some additional resources in the show notes.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring and keep getting those jobs done